I never thought a normal Tuesday morning could feel so fragile. The alarm on my phone buzzed at 6:15 a.m., its shrill tone bouncing off the walls of our small Atlanta apartment. Liam, my 7-year-old, was already stirring in the next room. His soft whimpers reminded me how much responsibility weighed on my shoulders. As a single dad, mornings were a balancing act between coffee, cereal, and making sure he actually got dressed before the bus came. I poured myself a cup, the bitter aroma grounding me in a sense of normality that now feels almost laughable. I glanced at the window. Peachtree Street stretched below, cars moving at their usual pace, the city humming in its sleepy rhythm. Nothing seemed wrong. Nothing at all. Liam ran into the kitchen wearing his favorite Spider-Man pajamas, clutching his worn red backpack. "Dad, can I have pancakes?" he asked, eyes wide. "Sure, champ," I said, forcing a smile. "But eat quickly, we don't want to miss the bus." He grinned, completely unaware that the world outside was about to change forever. I flicked on the news while flipping the pancakes. The anchor's voice was monotone, the same as every morning. Reports of unusual disturbances in downtown Atlanta. Police urge citizens to remain calm. I frowned. Disturbances? Unusual? The footage on the screen showed a street corner I knew well. People shoving, shouting, a man hitting another man with what looked like nothing. I shook my head. Probably just a fight. City life, right? I muttered to myself. But my gut twisted. Something about the movements, the screams, the vacant stares. It didn't look like a normal fight. I checked my phone. Social media was buzzing with videos from people streaming live downtown. I hesitated, scrolling. Faces twisted in unnatural ways, jerking movements, snarls. People biting. "Dad." Liam's voice broke through my thoughts. He was staring at the screen. "Nothing, buddy," I said quickly, swiping it off. "Just a weird fight downtown. That's all." I hugged him, feeling his small body tremble. It wasn't just his imagination. There was a tension in the air I couldn't shake. My heartbeat quickened, a subtle alarm I didn't want to acknowledge. Outside, the city's normal hum continued. But I knew the calm was deceptive. Somewhere in those streets, something had already started, and the world we knew was slipping, second by second, into chaos. And I had a feeling that by tonight, nothing would ever be the same. By the time Liam left for school around 7:30 a.m., the city still seemed normal. People rushing to work, buses crawling through traffic. But something in the back of my mind screamed that normal was a lie. I switched on the TV again while sipping the last of my cold coffee. The same anchor from before was back, but now his tone had changed. Quieter. Edgier. "Residents are advised to stay indoors if possible," he said, scrolling through a live feed of Peachtree Street. "Authorities are investigating reports of multiple violent incidents. Citizens are urged to remain calm." Calm. The word made me laugh bitterly. Calm was the exact opposite of what I felt. I scrolled through my phone while the pancakes cooled. Videos were popping up everywhere. People running, screaming, sometimes into open traffic, and in every clip you could see it. Faces twisted in ways that made your stomach turn. Not rage. Not anger. Hunger. I paused on one video from Midtown. A man had latched onto another like a predator, teeth sinking into flesh. My stomach flipped. I couldn't unsee it. "Dad." Liam's voice came through the phone. His school called. My heart skipped a beat. "Yeah, buddy?" I answered, forcing calm into my voice. School? They said there's a lockdown?" The words hit me like a punch. Lockdown. Not a drill. Not an announcement about snow or construction. A lockdown. I rubbed my temples, trying to process. The news was vague. No clear explanation, just orders to stay put, barricade doors, avoid contact. And yet the chaos outside seemed to grow. On my building's security cameras, the streets below were moving differently. The usual morning crowd was gone, replaced by a crawling, erratic mass. People pushing, biting, scratching, shouting. I grabbed Liam's backpack from the counter. The little bag suddenly felt unbearably heavy. I kissed him on the forehead. "We'll be okay, Liam," I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I believed it. I made a snap decision. We couldn't stay put. Staying inside felt like waiting for a predator to find its prey. We had to move. I packed what I could grab in seconds. A first aid kit, bottled water, some protein bars, flashlights, and a small baseball bat I kept under the bed. It wasn't much, but it had to be enough. By 8:15 a.m., the streets were no longer familiar. Cars abandoned mid-intersection. Smoke curling from a tipped-over trash bin. People running, some screaming, some moving unnaturally. And in the distance, a sound I'll never forget. Guttural, wet, animalistic. I didn't know what it was, but I knew one thing. The world as we knew it was gone, and for Liam and me, survival wasn't optional, it was the only choice. The first scream cut through the morning air like a knife. Liam and I had barely made it out of our apartment building. The lobby was empty, except for the occasional discarded backpack or spilled coffee cup. Outside, the streets were a nightmare in slow motion. People ran in every direction, bumping into cars, dragging suitcases, screaming for loved ones. At first, I thought it was just chaos, normal panic after some terrible accident. But then I saw him. A man mid-30s, his eyes wide and blank, moving stiffly toward a woman trying to push a stroller. And then he bit her. Just like that, sinking his teeth into her shoulder. The stroller tipped over, the baby screaming, and the mother fought back. But it was useless. Liam gasped beside me, clutching my hand so tightly I could feel his small bones press against my skin. "Dad, what's happening?" I didn't have an answer. Not a real one. I could only pull him back, away from the street, away from the throng of people turning into something else. Something I couldn't even name yet. Logic kicked in. Panic wasn't helping. Observing patterns, what I knew from survival shows, news stories about riots and disasters, was people closest to the chaos were either fleeing or attacking. No one was stopping the infected. And those infected? They didn't just bite. They didn't hesitate, they didn't slow down, and they didn't care who was in the way. I grabbed Liam's small backpack and slung it over his shoulder. "We need to move. Quietly. Slowly. Stick to the side streets." He nodded, eyes wide, the kind of wide-eyed terror you never forget as a parent. We ducked into a narrow alley, the smell hitting us before the sounds. Coppery, metallic, blood. Fear made my heart hammer in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. One wrong move, one loud noise, and we'd be next. Through the alley, I saw other small groups, just as scared, just as unprepared. Some people tried to help each other, but the infected were relentless. A man ran past, carrying a small child, screaming for his wife, only to be tackled by one of the creatures. The child dropped to the ground, crying. I had to look away. I couldn't let Liam see this. Logic told me we couldn't go back. Our apartment, once a safe haven, was now a trap. The streets were a web of chaos, and the only path was forward, toward safety, wherever that meant. I pressed Liam close. "Follow me. Don't look back." We moved as silently as we could, the city around us transforming into something unrecognizable. My mind raced, trying to anticipate the next move, calculating every risk. Every decision mattered now. One mistake, 1 second of hesitation, and it could be the end. As we slipped past another overturned car, I heard it again, the guttural, wet sound, the unmistakable moan of something inhuman. I clenched the bat tighter. This was no longer a normal day. This was survival. And it had only just begun. By the time we reached the main street, the chaos had multiplied. Sirens wailed in the distance, echoing off the brick buildings. Smoke drifted from a nearby convenience store, the windows shattered. And the streets were no longer streets, they were hunting grounds. My phone buzzed again. It was Liam's school. My stomach sank. I answered, my voice tight. "Hello? Mr. Reynolds?" A calm but tense voice said. "This is Jefferson Elementary. We're implementing an immediate lockdown. All students are being kept inside. Do not attempt to come get your child until we say it's safe. Repeat, do not come to the school. There are incidents nearby. We're trying to protect everyone. My chest tightened, panic clawing up my throat. Protecting Liam had always been my responsibility. Always. And now someone else was telling me I couldn't. Lockdown? What's happening? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause. Sir, there have been reports of violent attacks near the school. Please stay safe. We'll contact you as soon as we can. I hung up, my hands trembling. Liam was looking at me, worry etched into his little face. They said, school, bad things, he whispered. I forced a calm voice. It's okay, Liam. They're keeping you safe. You're safe. But safe? The word felt hollow. Safe didn't exist anymore. I could hear the chaos just a few blocks away, the screams, the guttural moans. Safe was a lie. I looked around, scanning the streets. Cars abandoned, people running, some staggering like they didn't even recognize themselves. I saw it in their eyes, the blank, hungry stare. That same hunger I'd glimpsed before. I knew then what I had to do. We couldn't stay in the open. We had to find shelter, temporary, fortified, somewhere we could regroup. Somewhere I could plan. I grabbed Liam's hand. Come on. We're going to find somewhere safe, okay? He nodded, but I could feel his tiny body trembling. I swallowed hard. I couldn't let him see me falter. If I showed fear, he'd feel it, and that could be worse than any danger outside. Logic kicked in. First, we needed a barricade. Second, we needed supplies. And third, we needed to understand what we were dealing with. I remembered the abandoned convenience store we'd passed earlier. Broken windows but solid walls. Not ideal, but it could hold. I could barricade the doors, grab what food was left, and figure out our next move. As we ran toward it, I glanced back at the streets. Shadows moved where there shouldn't have been shadows. People, or something else. My heart pounded, but I focused on Liam. On survival. On keeping him alive. Because if I failed, he was all I had left. The convenience store wasn't perfect, but it was ours. For now. The windows were shattered, yes, but the walls were solid. I could hear the faint groans outside, and the closer we got, the clearer the pattern became. Whoever, or whatever, was out there moved with purpose, relentless and hungry. I set Liam down behind the counter, my hands shaking slightly as I shoved shelves against the doors. He watched me silently, his wide eyes reflecting fear, but also trust. Trust that I couldn't betray. Dad, will they come in? He whispered. I forced a calm smile. Not if we make sure they can't. The bat felt heavier in my hands now, the weight of responsibility settling over me. Every decision from here on mattered. One slip could mean the end. I scavenged quickly, bottled water, protein bars, a few cans of soup. Nothing fancy, but enough to keep us alive for hours. I checked my phone. No signal. The city's chaos had already knocked out communication. We were completely cut off. I found a small first aid kit in the back. Bandages, antiseptic, scissors, even a few leftover painkillers. I packed it tightly. Logic dictated that injuries would happen. Fear dictated that I hoped we wouldn't need it, but I knew better. Next, I checked the layout of the store. One main entrance, a back door leading to an alley, and two small windows. I barricaded the front and back, leaving one escape path in case we had to run. I stocked some heavy items near the windows. Weapons of opportunity. Liam helped quietly, stacking cans and bottles. I glanced at him, trying to smile. You're doing great, buddy. He nodded, his small hands trembling but steady. Then came the sound that made my stomach drop. A soft tapping at one of the windows. Slow. Curious. Deliberate. I froze, listening. Liam pressed against me. My mind raced. No one was outside, at least no one normal. Logic screamed that this was our first real test. The tapping stopped. Silence. Then a low, guttural moan. I whispered, "Stay behind me." Don't make a sound. My plan crystallized. We weren't staying here long. This was a temporary stop. Supplies in, barricade up, assess the streets, move when it's safe. Every choice from here on had to follow that plan. I crouched behind the counter, bat in hand, eyes scanning the broken windows. Every noise, every shadow mattered. I felt my chest tighten, adrenaline surging. But the most important part, the part that kept me steady, was Liam. His small face, trusting me, depending on me to survive. I had no idea how far we'd make it today. No idea how many others were out there. But I knew one thing, for him I would do whatever it took. Even if it meant stepping into the nightmare outside. The streets were unrecognizable. What had once been a bustling Atlanta morning, coffee shops filling up, buses crawling through traffic, joggers on sidewalks, had transformed into something out of a nightmare. People ran like their lives depended on it, because they did. I held Liam close, steering him down a side street, away from the main avenue. Trash cans tumbled into the road, car alarms screamed endlessly, and the smell of smoke and blood clung to the air. Somewhere behind us, a bus had crashed into a storefront. The driver. I didn't want to know. It wasn't just panic, it was mob logic. People weren't thinking. They weren't cooperating. They were moving randomly, bottlenecking at intersections, screaming over each other. And in the chaos, the infected moved with terrifying efficiency. I saw a man, maybe mid-20s, lunge at another, teeth sinking into flesh. The victim screamed, clawing at him, but the man didn't stop. He moved like a predator, jerky, relentless, leaving blood on the pavement. I pulled Liam behind a parked car. He whimpered and I kissed the top of his head. It's okay, buddy. Just keep close. Logic dictated our next move, avoid the crowds. Use the alleys, stay out of sight, don't make noise. But the city had become a labyrinth of chaos. Streets clogged with abandoned vehicles, people screaming in panic, and the occasional infected wandering aimlessly, snapping at anyone nearby. We ducked into a narrow alley. The sound of our footsteps echoed too loudly and I froze. Around the corner, a woman stumbled into the alley, hands outstretched, eyes wild. She collapsed, muttering incomprehensible words, drooling. Something about her movements didn't feel human. I pressed Liam behind me. Don't look, I whispered. But he already had. His little hand squeezed mine tightly. Dad, what's wrong with her? Something very sick, I said carefully, forcing calm into my voice. We just need to get away. We continued down the alley, but each turn brought more chaos. People pushing each other, screaming for family, trying to escape, but the panic was multiplying, and the infected were finding their way through the cracks. At one point, a man tried to force his way past us, panicked and screaming. I shoved him away. Logic and instinct collided. I couldn't let him knock us into danger. Survival didn't allow hesitation. By the time we found another safe stretch of street, my arms ached from carrying Liam, my hands burned from gripping the bat, and my mind raced. We were only a few blocks from our temporary shelter, but the city felt endless, like a living nightmare with no edges. And yet, amidst all this chaos, I clung to one certainty. I had to keep Liam alive. That was the only thing that mattered. Because in a city where reason had collapsed and survival was all that mattered, one wrong step could be the difference between life and death. And I wouldn't let that happen. Not to him. Not to us. We'd been moving for what felt like hours. My legs ached, my hands burned from gripping Liam, and my mind spun with every horrifying image I'd seen on the streets. And then it happened. I saw it first, a man in a red hoodie stumbling down a side street. At first, I thought he was just another panicked civilian. But the way he moved, jerky, uncoordinated, yet purposeful, made my stomach twist. His head snapped toward a woman carrying groceries, and before I could even blink, he lunged. Teeth sank into her arm. She screamed, kicked, tried to push him away, but he didn't stop. And then, the woman's eyes went blank. Her screams turned into something wet and guttural, the same sound I'd heard in the alley earlier. I grabbed Liam, pulling him behind a dumpster. His small body shook. "Dad, what is that?" I swallowed hard. I don't know," I admitted. And even as I said it, the reality hit me. These weren't just sick people. They weren't just violent. They were something else entirely. Logic clicked in, survival instinct sharpening every sense. Noise attracts them. Movement draws them. Weakness is exploited. I peered around the corner. Another one appeared, staggering toward us from a blocked street, dragging a limp arm behind him. I felt bile rise in my throat, but I forced it down. Panic wouldn't save us. Strategy would. I whispered to Liam, "Stay low, stay quiet. Do exactly what I say." He nodded, eyes wide and terrified, but trusting me completely. That trust, it was heavier than any weapon, heavier than fear itself. I scanned the alley. We had options. I could try to run straight down, risking exposure. I could try to hide and wait, but supplies and time were limited. My mind raced, calculating every possible move. Then I saw it. An open fire escape on the side of a building just high enough to climb out of immediate reach. It was risky. If the infected noticed, we'd be trapped, but it offered cover, a chance to reassess, and maybe a path forward. "Liam," I said quietly, "we're going up. Hold my hand tight." His small fingers locked with mine, squeezing as if his life depended on it, which it did. I lifted him first, then climbed after, every creak of metal making my heart hammer. Below us, the infected groaned and thrashed, but they didn't see us, yet. We made it to the rooftop, panting, hearts racing. The city sprawled before us, broken and chaotic. Smoke, abandoned cars, and shadows moving in every direction. I set Liam down, pulling him into a protective hug. "We're safe, for now," I said, trying to believe it myself. But even as I said the words, I knew they were only temporary. The world had changed, and the rules were different now. And if we were going to survive, we would have to learn them, fast. The rooftop offered a fleeting sense of safety. From up here, I could see the city sprawled in chaos. Abandoned cars, smoke rising from overturned trash bins, and shadows moving in ways that made my skin crawl. But we couldn't stay up there forever. Exposure, limited supplies, and sheer exhaustion meant we had to find a proper shelter. I scanned the skyline. A few blocks over, an old convenience store, one we'd passed earlier, looked like it could serve as a temporary refuge. Broken windows, yes, but solid walls, aisles for barricades, and enough supplies to last a few hours. I turned to Liam. "We're going down. Stick close. Do exactly what I say, okay?" He nodded, clinging to my hand like I was the only anchor left in a world gone mad. We descended carefully, using fire escapes and side alleys to avoid the worst of the crowds. Every step required attention, every sound, every shadow. A misplaced footstep could mean death. Inside the store, I quickly assessed the layout. The front doors were shattered, yes, but the aisles and shelves offered opportunities for barricades. I pulled over what I could. Canned goods, crates, anything heavy. Liam helped where he could, stacking cans to reinforce the front entrance. "Almost done," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But even as I spoke, the guttural moans outside reminded me of the danger lurking just beyond. Once the barricades were in place, I crouched next to Liam, pulling him close. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. But even as I said it, I wasn't entirely sure I believed it. I rummaged through the shelves, gathering bottled water, more canned food, and a small first aid kit I'd spotted in the back. Every item had to count. Every decision could be the difference between life and death. Then came the silence. Not the calm silence of peace, but the tense, waiting silence that made your skin crawl. Outside, the infected moved, stalking, searching, waiting. I could hear footsteps, groans, a soft scratching at the broken glass. I gripped the bat tighter. "Stay behind me," I whispered. Liam huddled close, and for a moment, I allowed myself to observe him. not as a scared child but as my son, my reason for surviving. His small hand in mine, his trust, his hope. It gave me strength. Logic dictated our next steps. Ration supplies, reinforce our position, and wait for an opportunity to move. But emotional instinct, the need to protect my son, was the fuel that kept me alert, sharp, and ready for anything. The city outside might have descended into chaos, but inside this fragile shelter, I swore to myself, we would survive. We had to. Because in this new world, survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about keeping the people you loved alive, too. And Liam was all I had left. The store offered temporary safety, but isolation brought a new kind of anxiety. I couldn't stop thinking about the world outside, or the messages I might be missing. Every phone buzz felt like a potential lifeline or worse, bad news. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Dead zones everywhere. Of course. Atlanta's chaos had knocked out most communications. But I tried anyway, calling friends, family, anyone. Jerry? The line finally crackled. A voice I barely recognized, hurried and shaky. Are you safe? They're saying. They trailed off. Static. Then another person, it's everywhere. Not just Atlanta. People, aren't, it's, just get out if you can. I hung up, stomach twisting. Contradictory reports, rumors, misinformation. Some said the government was quarantining neighborhoods. Others claimed mass evacuations. Social media posts contradicted each other. Some people swore it was a virus. Others said something supernatural. Liam tugged at my sleeve. Dad, are they going to come for us? I forced a calm smile. No, buddy. Not if we stay quiet and smart. Okay. But I didn't feel calm. Confusion gnawed at me. The world wasn't making sense, and logic, the one thing I relied on, was under siege. I tried to map out what I knew. The infected weren't just violent. They were fast, relentless, and appeared in clusters. Panic outside was spreading faster than I'd ever seen. And yet, some streets seemed strangely empty, almost as if people had fled or been taken. I scribbled notes on a torn piece of cardboard. Stay low. Avoid crowds. Barricade. Ration water. Keep Liam calm. Rationing wasn't just about supplies. It was about hope. Every can of beans, every bottle of water, every moment of quiet felt like a small victory in a world gone mad. Then came another burst of news from a radio someone had left behind. It was crackly, distant, but clear enough. Authorities advise remaining indoors. Curfews are in effect. Reports of multiple violent incidents, repeat, multiple incidents, across the city. I clenched the bat tighter. The scale was growing. The danger wasn't isolated. It was everywhere. Liam watched me, his face pale. Dad, why is this happening? I swallowed. I don't know, buddy. But we're going to get through it. Together. Even as I said it, I knew the truth. No plan was guaranteed. No escape route was foolproof. But we had each other, and that was something the infected couldn't take away, at least not yet. Logic told me the next step was clear. Wait for nightfall, reassess, and plan our move carefully. Every second mattered. Every decision could mean survival, or the end. And with Liam depending on me, there was no room for error. The night was supposed to be our friend, darkness offering cover while the city burned. But darkness also amplified every sound. Distant screams, the shuffle of feet on broken pavement, and that guttural wet moan that made my blood run cold. I had just finished reinforcing a back window with crates when I heard it, a slow, deliberate scratching at the front barricade. My heart stopped. Liam, I whispered, pressing him behind me. Stay down. Don't make a sound. The scratching grew louder, punctuated by a low, wet growl. Then came the banging, metal against wood, soft at first, then urgent. Someone or something was trying to get in. Logic kicked in. Weapons. Escape routes. Distraction. Panic wouldn't help. I grabbed the bat, feeling its familiar weight, and crept toward the front. Through a crack in the barricade I could see it. A man, or what had once been a man, shuffling in jerky, unnatural motions. Blood smeared across his shirt, eyes blank yet focused. He hissed, low and wet, sniffing the air. I exhaled slowly. "We can handle this," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. The first strike had to be precise. I swung the bat, hitting the barricade near him. A loud crash echoed. He snapped his head toward the noise. I pressed a small radio across the room, setting it on a loud, static-filled station. The sudden burst of sound drew him toward it, jerky limbs lurching. "Now, Liam," I hissed, guiding him toward the back exit. We slipped through the alley behind the store, hearts pounding, every step calculated. I glanced back, he hadn't followed. Yet the encounter reminded me how close death could come, how fragile our temporary safety really was. Liam's small hand gripped mine tightly. "Dad, he tried to get us." "I know, buddy," I whispered. "I know." Logic and adrenaline were one now. We had supplies, a shelter, and temporary safety, but the world outside was hunting us, relentless and methodical. Every street, every alley could be our last. I realized then that survival wasn't just about barricades or supplies. It was about anticipation, about thinking faster than the threat, and making split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. And as I held Liam close in the alley's shadows, I promised myself, nothing would happen to him. Not tonight. Not ever. Because I was his father. And surviving meant protecting him, no matter what. We had barely caught our breath after the close call outside the convenience store when a sound reached me from the alley, a desperate, strangled cry for help. I froze, straining to listen. "Jerry, help me." It was Mrs. Alvarez, our neighbor from 2 floors up. She'd always been kind, waving when she saw Liam and me. Her small frame had always seemed fragile. But now she staggered toward us, blood smeared on her sleeve, eyes wide with terror. I scanned the alley. Behind her, a cluster of the infected shuffled closer, their guttural moans low and hungry. Every instinct screamed at me, "Save yourself, save Liam, run." But another instinct, one I couldn't ignore, pulled me forward. I couldn't leave her. Not like this. "Mrs. Alvarez, stay back," I shouted. She hesitated, but panic clouded her judgment. I glanced at Liam. His eyes were wide, confused, scared. "Dad, can we help her?" I swallowed hard. I couldn't tell him yes, not without risking both of our lives. "We have to think fast," I said, voice tight. Logic flashed. Distraction, barricade, escape. I grabbed a trash can lid and banged it against the wall, drawing a few of the infected away from her. The sound made them lurch, jerky movements turning toward the noise. "Now!" I shouted, pulling Liam down the alley. Mrs. Alvarez ran, but one of the infected had noticed her. She screamed and my gut sank. I wanted to help, I wanted to save her, but we didn't have the numbers, the weapons, or the space. I kept running, holding Liam close, his small body trembling. Every step forward was agony, every scream behind us tore at my conscience. By the time we reached the back entrance of another abandoned building, the sounds of chaos behind us faded slightly. Liam buried his face in my chest. "Dad, she..." "I know, buddy. I know," I whispered, hugging him tighter. Logic told me we had done the right thing. Survival meant making impossible choices, even if your heart screamed against them. Emotional instinct told me I had failed. But one thing was clear, I couldn't afford to falter again. Not for Liam, not for anyone. The world had changed. The rules were different now. Life was about split-second decisions, and mercy had to be weighed against survival. As we barricaded the back door of our new temporary shelter, I promised myself that I would do everything in my power to keep Liam safe, even if it meant leaving my guilt behind in the shadows of the city. The city had changed overnight. Atlanta, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a maze designed to trap and hunt us. Streets were blocked by abandoned cars, fires smoldered at intersections, and the occasional flicker of movement in windows reminded me that we were never truly alone. I held Liam close as we crept through side streets, using shadows and alleys to avoid the main chaos. Every corner we turned, I scanned for threats. Patterns emerged quickly. Infected moved in clusters, attracted to noise and movement, but seemed less coordinated when separated. Logic dictated that staying out of their path and avoiding attention was our best strategy. We passed a smashed grocery store. Looted. Shelves overturned. Panic and desperation had left their mark. I took mental notes. Supplies were scarce and the few remaining stores would be dangerous to enter. Survival meant balancing risk with necessity. I found a small convenience store open, not looted yet. Quiet. It offered water, canned goods, and a dusty first aid kit. I motioned for Liam to stay close. We grab what we need and go. Quick and quiet. Inside, I moved silently, filling my bag with essentials. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. Every decision mattered. Every mistake could be fatal. Outside, the city continued its chaotic rhythm. I saw people running, some screaming for help, others changing. A man lunged at a passerby, teeth bared. My stomach churned. Liam pressed against me. "Dad, are they like before?" he whispered. "Yes, buddy," I said quietly. "We keep moving, okay? Stick with me." We retraced a route through back alleys and side streets, using knowledge of Atlanta's layout to avoid the main avenues. I avoided areas with large crowds. Logic told me that noise, panic, and disorder attracted the infected. At one point, a burned-out car blocked our path. I found a detour through a narrow alleyway. Shadows moved in the darkness. Maybe animals, maybe infected, but we passed without incident. Every step forward was calculated, deliberate. By mid-afternoon, we reached a small, abandoned office building. It wasn't ideal, but it offered temporary shelter and a chance to regroup. I barricaded the entrance with desks and filing cabinets, reinforcing it as best as I could. Liam helped silently, stacking items with care. I sat beside him, taking a deep breath. "We did good today, buddy. We're safe, for now." He leaned against me, exhaustion written across his small face. "Dad, will it always be like this?" I hugged him tightly. "I don't know. But we'll face it together. That's all that matters." Logic and instinct guided every move I made, but the emotional weight, the fear, the hope, the need to protect Liam, was heavier than any weapon. Survival wasn't just about avoiding the infected. It was about keeping the people you love alive, and that meant staying smart, staying quiet, and never letting your guard down. Because in a city like this, one misstep could be your last. By mid-afternoon, our temporary office shelter felt safe enough for a brief rest, but we couldn't linger. Supplies were dwindling. Water bottles almost gone, protein bars down to the last few, and canned food rationed carefully. Hunger was creeping in, and logic screamed that we needed more. "Liam," I said, crouching beside him, "we're going to make a quick run. Just for food and water. Stay close to me, okay?" He nodded, gripping my hand tightly. "Okay, Dad." We moved cautiously through the streets, avoiding the main avenues where panic had fully taken over. Windows reflected the chaos. Abandoned cars, overturned trash bins, and occasional figures stumbling or attacking anyone who got too close. Every step felt like a calculated gamble. The first stop was a small grocery store near a side street. Its front door had been shattered, but the aisles still contained supplies. I motioned for Liam to stay low behind a shelf as I moved forward. Every noise, every clatter of a can made my heart race. I grabbed water bottles, a few cans of beans and soup, and some granola bars. Logic dictated speed, take what we need and leave before anyone noticed. But then I heard a soft shuffle from the frozen foods aisle. I froze. Liam's small gasp echoed in my ears. A man, or what used to be a man, was there. Face pale, eyes blank, arms jerky as he reached for a fallen can. He didn't notice us yet, but the slightest noise could draw his attention. I whispered to Liam, "Stay still. Don't breathe loud." We backed away slowly, retracing our steps, but the movement drew a faint groan from the figure. His head snapped toward us. My chest tightened. "Run," I hissed, grabbing Liam's hand and darting for the exit. The man lunged, but his coordination was off. We made it out, adrenaline pumping, hearts racing. Once outside, I crouched behind a parked car, catching my breath. Liam's small shoulders shook and I held him close. "It's okay, buddy. We're safe." He buried his face in my chest. "I don't want it to get me, Dad." I kissed the top of his head. "I know, buddy. I know. But I'll make sure it doesn't." We continued, gathering what supplies we could find along quieter streets and alleys. Every scavenging trip carried risk, but logic demanded it. We couldn't survive on fear alone. We needed food, water, and information. By evening, our backpack was full. Liam was exhausted, but the food and water gave us hope, small victories in a city that had become a nightmare. I looked at him, the little boy depending entirely on me, and felt a surge of determination. Survival wasn't just about avoiding the infected. It was about keeping him alive, teaching him how to stay calm, and showing him that even in the worst world imaginable, hope could exist. And I would fight with everything I had to keep that hope alive. By late evening, the city streets had become even more unpredictable. Fires smoldered at intersections, abandoned cars littered the roadways, and the distant moans of the infected echoed through the concrete canyons. We needed to move. Staying in the chaos of downtown Atlanta was a death sentence. I remembered the suburban streets just a few miles north, quieter, residential, smaller homes with fences and fewer crowds. Logic told me it might offer temporary refuge, maybe even a chance to regroup. I guided Liam carefully through side streets, alleys, and back roads, avoiding main avenues entirely. Every shadow, every sound made me tense. But for the first time in hours, the streets seemed calm. Not safe, but quieter. We reached a small two-story house on a quiet cul-de-sac. Windows were intact, doors locked. A for sale sign hung crooked in the yard. Perfect. I motioned for Liam to stay behind me as I checked the perimeter. No movement, no groaning, no signs of recent chaos. "Looks clear," I whispered. Inside, the house was dusty and empty, but structurally sound. I barricaded the doors as best I could with furniture and household items. Liam helped quietly, stacking chairs and a small bookshelf against the front door. I sank onto the floor beside him. "We're safe, for now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He leaned against me, exhausted. "Dad, will we have to leave again?" I held him tightly. "I don't know, buddy. But tonight we rest. Tomorrow we figure out the next step." We scavenged what we could from the kitchen. Canned soup, bottled water, a few granola bars. Enough to last a day or two at least. I checked the back doors and windows, reinforcing them with whatever I could find. Logic demanded a plan for multiple exits in case the worst happened. For the first time that day, I let myself sit back and breathe. Liam lay on the couch, finally closing his eyes, trusting that I could protect him. I felt the weight of the day press down on me, the streets, the chaos, the impossible choices, the infected, but also a surge of determination. This temporary haven wasn't permanent. It wasn't safe forever. But it was ours for now, and it offered something precious, a chance to regroup, plan, and survive. And I would do everything in my power to keep it that way, for Liam, for both of us. Because in a world gone mad, even a little safety, even a brief moment of calm, was worth fighting for. The suburban house offered a rare chance to pause and think. For the first time since morning, I had a moment to observe, to analyze what we were really up against. The chaos outside had slowed somewhat. If anything, the night had made the dangers even more unpredictable, but from this vantage I could start seeing patterns. I watched from a second-floor window, Liam asleep on the couch below, his small chest rising and falling. The street was quiet, but occasional shadows betrayed movement. Figures shuffling, some jerky, some limping. They seemed drawn to noise more than light, their movements erratic but relentless. Logic began to form. These weren't ordinary people, not in any sense I knew. They were slow at first, but unstoppable once focused. Noise, movement, and proximity dictated their behavior. Panic among the living only amplified their effectiveness. I whispered to myself, jotting notes on a scrap of paper. Avoid crowded streets. Move quietly. Barricades slow but don't stop. Distraction works temporarily. Don't confront unless necessary. Every observation had a purpose: survival. Patterns revealed weaknesses. They could be avoided, misled, or outmaneuvered if one stayed calm and logical. Later, I took Liam to a small kitchen table. "Buddy, I need you to help me notice things, okay? Quietly watch, but don't make a sound unless I say so." He nodded, still drowsy but attentive. "Like, seeing them?" "Exactly. We learn from them. The more we know, the safer we are." We watched for hours, marking movements, noting times when activity increased and how clusters formed. Occasionally, a figure would wander too close, jerky, unpredictable, but following the same basic rules. It was horrifying, but understanding them gave me a strategy. By the time dawn approached, I had a plan forming. The infected moved slower during early morning hours, seemed less coordinated, and were drawn to obvious sounds. That meant our next movements had to be strategic. Minimal noise, careful timing, and constant vigilance. I checked on Liam, still asleep. Logic told me he had to rest. Emotional instinct reminded me that every second we survived, every pattern we learned, brought us closer to safety. For the first time in hours, I allowed myself a brief sense of control. Knowledge was power, observation was survival, and staying calm could save us both. The city outside might be a nightmare, but understanding it, even just a little, meant we had a chance. A small chance. And for Liam, that was enough to fight for. By mid-morning, we knew staying in the suburban house wasn't a long-term solution. Supplies were limited, and we needed a safer location. A friend's home in a more remote part of the city, with secure walls and a reliable water source. I led Liam quietly to the edge of the neighborhood, choosing back streets that avoided major avenues. The early morning light was a blessing, reducing the cover for the infected, but also making us more visible. Logic dictated careful timing. Move slowly, stay low, and avoid unnecessary noise. Our route brought us to the I-85 corridor. Normally, a highway would be a straightforward path, but now it was a nightmare. Abandoned cars blocked lanes, some crashed, some on fire. The smell of gasoline mixed with smoke and something far more metallic: blood. I crouched behind a guardrail, holding Liam close. "We wait," I whispered. "We watch, then move when it's clear." Across the lanes I could see movement. Groups of people, some desperate, some different. The infected had made it to the highway. A man staggered from a wrecked SUV, teeth bared, lurching toward a fleeing family. The screams cut through the morning air, chilling me to the bone. I pressed Liam down, his small hand shaking in mine. "We're safe right here," I murmured. But even as I said it, I knew safety was temporary. When a lull came, I calculated our path: timing, speed, obstacles. A strip of abandoned median offered cover. If we sprinted in short bursts, we could reach the far side, then duck into a residential street. One mistake, one loud footstep, and we'd be exposed. I nodded to Liam. "Ready?" He nodded, eyes wide but determined. We moved in short, calculated bursts, every sound amplified by adrenaline. Halfway across, a loud clang echoed behind us, a trash can kicked by someone, or something. My heart leapt. The nearest infected turned, jerky limbs moving toward the noise. I grabbed Liam, shielding him as we dove behind a concrete barrier in the median. He gasped, panic in his eyes. "Dad, they're coming." "They can't get us here," I whispered, steadying both our breathing. "We just need to wait, then run." The infected wandered for a few moments, confused by our sudden disappearance. Logic won this round. When the coast cleared, we sprinted the last few yards, reaching the side street without further incident. I sank to the pavement, breathing heavily, holding Liam close. We made it, I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. He rested his head against my shoulder, small and exhausted. Dad, that was close. I know, buddy. I know, I said. And even as I said it, I knew it wasn't over. It never would be. Every street, every alley, every intersection was a gamble. But for now we were alive. And in a city overrun by chaos, that was enough to keep moving forward. We hadn't gone far from the highway before the chaos reminded me just how fragile our survival was. A narrow residential street offered temporary cover, but shadows and movement suggested we weren't alone. I pressed Liam close, scanning the area. A small group of infected had spotted us from a distance. They moved slowly at first, jerky and uneven, but their focus was sharp and they were closing in. Stay behind me, I whispered. Every instinct screamed that panic could get us killed. Liam nodded, trembling but obeying. Logic kicked in. Direct confrontation was suicide. Distraction was our ally. I glanced at a nearby overturned trash bin, grabbed a metal pipe and tossed it across the street. It clattered loudly, drawing the attention of one of the nearest infected. I grabbed Liam's hand. Run. Now. We sprinted toward a small alley, hearts pounding, adrenaline making each step sharper, faster. Behind us, the infected snapped their heads toward the noise, momentarily confused. We used the confusion to our advantage, ducking behind fences and cars, breathing as quietly as possible. One of them, a man with torn clothes and a face smeared in blood, suddenly lunged toward the alley entrance. I swung the metal pipe just enough to push him back and shouted for Liam to keep moving. My voice cracked, my heart raced, but it worked. He stumbled, buying us precious seconds. We ducked into a small abandoned garage. I barricaded the door with crates and old furniture. Liam leaned against me, shivering. Dad, I thought we were done for. I know, buddy, I whispered, holding him tight. I won't let anything happen to you. Not while I'm here. Logic dictated that we couldn't stay long, but emotional instinct reminded me that I had to reassure him. Fear could paralyze him as easily as it could paralyze me. We rested for a moment, catching our breath, and I scanned the area outside through a cracked window. The infected were lingering, searching, frustrated by our sudden disappearance. Their attention span was short, predictable, but their persistence was terrifying. I whispered to Liam, see? They'll move on soon. And when they do, we move carefully, quietly, and smart. He nodded, eyes wide but trusting. That trust, his faith in me, was more powerful than any weapon. It sharpened my mind, focused my instincts, and reminded me why survival mattered so desperately. Because in a world overrun by chaos and relentless predators, the strongest instinct wasn't just survival. It was protection. And as long as I had breath in my lungs, Liam's safety would be my single, unwavering purpose. Nightfall changed everything. The dim glow of the city gave the streets a deceptive calm, but I knew better. Darkness hid movement, amplified fear, and made even familiar streets treacherous. I crouched beside Liam in our temporary garage hideout. Night's coming, I whispered. We need to be extra careful. Stay quiet, stay low, and follow me exactly. He nodded, clutching my hand, small and trusting. That trust was heavier than any weapon, sharper than any instinct. It reminded me why I had to survive, not for myself, but for him. Logic dictated our plan. Movement at night was dangerous but unavoidable. Supplies needed to be rationed, exits planned, and distractions prepared. I gathered crates and furniture to reinforce the garage door and blocked any weak points. Every potential entry point had to be considered. I whispered to Liam, see the shadows outside? Don't look directly at them. Just notice patterns. Learn what's safe, what isn't. For hours we observed. Figures moved in predictable bursts, slow, erratic, attracted to noise. Some wandered aimlessly, others seemed drawn to clusters of chaos. The more we watched, the more I could predict their movements. Every pattern became a potential advantage, every observation a survival tool. When we finally decided to move, it was methodical. I used darkness to our benefit, keeping to shadows and avoiding open streets. I taught Liam how to stay silent, how to move deliberately, and how to read cues in the environment. Each small lesson was survival. Each step reinforced his trust in me. We encountered a small group of infected near an abandoned park. I paused, holding Liam close. We wait. Watch them. Notice how they move. They lingered for minutes, jerky limbs, scanning for any noise. Then I used a small stone to create a distraction. The figures turned and we slipped quietly past, hearts racing yet alive. By the time we reached another safe house on the edge of the neighborhood, Liam's eyes were heavy with exhaustion. I hugged him tightly. We made it, buddy. Safe for now. He whispered, Dad, you're really smart. I smiled, though my chest burned from tension. We're smart together. That's how we survive. Nightfall had tested us, forced us to think, observe, and act with precision. It reminded me that survival wasn't just about avoiding the infected. It was about strategy, patience, and trust. And as I held Liam close, listening to the distant moans of the city, I realized one thing. As long as I had him, I would fight, plan, and endure. Because protecting him wasn't just instinct, it was purpose. By the next morning it was clear. The city wasn't calming down. Fires burned unchecked, sirens wailed intermittently, and the streets were crawling with the infected. Logic dictated that staying put for long was no longer safe. Supplies were running low, and our temporary shelters offered only fleeting protection. I roused Liam gently. Buddy, we need to move again. But we'll be smarter this time. He nodded, sleepy but trusting. That trust was my anchor in a world that had lost all reason. I scanned our surroundings, thinking like a strategist. Movement had to be minimal yet effective. Barricades weren't enough. We needed diversions, distractions, and quick escape routes. I collected whatever we could carry: a crowbar, a backpack of food and water, and a few heavy objects to use as makeshift weapons. We set out carefully, sticking to side streets and alleys, observing patterns of movement. I noticed that large groups of the infected seemed to avoid certain areas: narrow alleys, places with obstacles, and shadows that disrupted their path. I used these observations to plan our route, guiding Liam through areas that minimized exposure. At one point, a cluster of infected blocked our intended path. Logic and improvisation collided. I grabbed a small trash can, rolled it across the street, and followed with a loud metal clang from a pipe I had picked up. The noise drew several figures away, giving us a narrow window to sprint through the remaining open space. Liam clung to my hand, panting, eyes wide. Dad, that was close. I know, buddy, I said, swallowing my fear. But we made it. Together. As we moved, I realized the city had changed irreversibly. The chaos wasn't random. It had rules, patterns, and weaknesses. If we could observe, anticipate, and act decisively, we could survive. But the margin for error was razor thin. We reached a small cluster of suburban homes that seemed unoccupied. I reinforced doors with heavy furniture and barricaded windows as best I could. Liam helped quietly, following my lead. Later, as we caught our breath, he looked at me. Dad, how do we know we'll survive? I hugged him tightly. We don't. But we do know this: as long as we think, plan, and stick together, we have a chance. That's all we can do: stay smart, stay alert, and never give up. The day had taught me that survival wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was about improvisation, observation, and relentless determination. Every decision carried weight, every step mattered, and every moment of calm was precious. And as I watched Liam settle into a corner, exhausted but safe, I promised myself that no matter what came next, I would do whatever it took to keep him alive. Because survival wasn't enough. Protection, strategy, and love, those were the real keys to staying alive. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the city in pale orange and gray. From our small barricaded safe house, the streets looked eerily calm compared to the chaos of the past hours. Smoke still curled from abandoned vehicles, and distant moans reminded me that the nightmare wasn't over. But for the first time, I felt a sliver of hope. I leaned against the wall, Liam asleep beside me. His small, exhausted body reminded me why every decision, every risk, every desperate measure mattered. He was my reason to survive, my anchor in a world gone mad. I reflected on the past 12 hours. Panic, terror, impossible choices. We had witnessed the worst of humanity and the unrelenting hunger of the infected. But we had also survived. Through observation, logic, and sheer determination, we had learned how to move, how to hide, how to protect each other. I whispered to Liam even though he slept, "We did it, buddy. We made it through the first day." The lessons were clear. Stay calm, watch patterns, minimize risk, and never underestimate the danger, but also never underestimate the value of hope. Even in a city overrun by chaos, small victories mattered. Every barricade, every diversion, every careful step forward was proof that survival was possible. I began planning our next moves. More supplies would be needed. Safer shelters, better escape routes, and constant observation. But now, for the first time, I had a framework, a strategy grounded in both logic and experience. Liam stirred and opened his eyes. "Dad, are we really safe?" I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Safe enough for now. And we'll stay that way together. That's what matters." He nodded, leaning into me. And for the first time since the outbreak began, I allowed myself to believe that survival wasn't just a desperate scramble. It was a possibility, a fragile, hard-won reality that we could build upon. The city outside was still dangerous. The infected still roamed. Chaos still reigned. But inside this small, barricaded house, we had survived. We had endured. And as the sun rose over Atlanta, casting light over the destruction, I realized something profound. Survival wasn't just about avoiding death, it was about protecting those you love, learning from each moment, and holding on to hope, even when the world seemed to have lost it entirely. For Liam, for me, for the chance of a tomorrow, we had survived the first 12 hours. And we would continue, one careful, deliberate step at a time. Because in a world that had become a nightmare, that was the only choice we had.